Hi there, this is Popo, I hope you're fine. Welcome back to the Matches New Era Tournament, Round 3. And today we're going to review the two games played between 1254 and Gluttony. So let's get started. Okay, so for this first game, 1254 gets the white pieces with the Nagas faction, and Gluttony as the doppelganger player would play the same faction as his opponent, so he plays also the Nagas with the black pieces. So the Nagas is a faction that allows you to buff your pawns, and you're going to create some pawn storm against your opponent. But on the same point, you have a very strong queen which has 2 lives. So if it gets taken, it's still on the board when 1 life left. So the idea of check and infiltration tactic are just insane with this faction. So even if you're down a lot of pieces, I can assure you that this faction is very hard to play against. Let's see how it goes. The game starts with pawn to d3, and I can assure you that this is already a blunder. Here you never want to open the diagonal here, because any kind of infiltration by the Nagas can be very strong. So maybe first you want to open some other pawns here and try to be sure that your king would be safe with the castle. But pawn to d3 is played, and now pawn to c5, a little more careful. Now we have Empress to d2, and you see that it buffs the pawn just in front of it, so it would act like a queen by 2. Now we have Empress to d6, which is played, and now, okay, you have to be careful. If that Empress dares to move, you have this, which is check. Okay, and even though that is innocent, now there's a lot of pieces defending, but you'll see that with less and less pieces this is very hard to get this. So be careful on this control of the diagonal, and that would be the whole key of this game. Now we have pawn launches to b5. What is this? The snake can buff the pawns on the back rank, I mean on the same rank as them, so for their first move they can jump up to 4 squares as their first move, so a pawn launch. And now pawn to b5 is played. Of course you can't take it, else you're going to be taken. And remember that it has 2 lives, so if this is taken, it's still in place, but you see that some swords are removed. So now it gains... no, it doesn't gain, it loses range, so it goes from range 4 to range 3. But still the abilities apply. So here in the game we have pawn to g6, we have pawn to b4 trying to strike, pawn to f6, snake to b1, and short castle. I can tell you that black is way better in this position, because it just castles on one way and is going to launch the storm here on the other side. Here, on the white side, they didn't castle yet, and they tried to launch the pawn storm on the side the king is. So they're going to have a very bad time here. In the game, we have snake to b2, so this is a very cool move, because now also these pawns get buffed, so they can be launched very far away. So let me show you up here. But now a pawn to a6, so the storm begins, and I think this snake wants to join the party. We have pawn captures c5, Empress captures, and now pawn to c4, building a very cool arch. But of course, black has several tricks up on their sleeves, and they capture on b5. You can't really capture here with the snake on b5, else I'm going to go here with Empress to f3, and you can't defend this. So you can try this move with pawn to c3, only problem is that now it would run into Empress to c1 check, so you have to defend here. Then it would run into Empress, take c3 check, and okay, you're going to defend again. Now you have Empress to a1 with check, and okay, if you defend, I'm going to snap it, and you can't even play this, because I'm going to take it, and you can't even take me, else I'm going still to have a life and take your king. So you have to defend again with the Empress, and then I'm going to take it. And then I'm going to be up 3 pawns of material, and you're going to lose this game. So instead we have pawn captures, and now pawn c4 is launched. And you see that it's beginning slowly to destroy all the structures here. So pawn captures 3 force here, and now Empress captures. Here, a way to deal in this position, even this looks very bold, is to play Empress to c1. Here you can decide to go with Empress to c3, you can't take it. And if you take this, I'm not sure this is good because now I can show you the line. There would be captures, and if you captures this, I'm going to capture, and this is mate. So here, after this and this, you put the king to d1, and the idea here is just going to slide this here. And if there's capture, you're going to put the king back. Even if you try Empress to d4, you put the pawn here, maybe Empress to f4, king to e1, and you're safe here. I mean, not that safe, but safer. But here, instead in the position, we have pawn to c3, so opening a little more the position, I don't feel comfortable with this. And here, a very cool move played by Gluttony is pawn to d5, trying to challenge this and try to get for a big attack. And now we have a blunder, basically played by 1254 with Empress to c2. Only problem is that you can take the pawn, and this is check. So what do? Best move here in the position to play king to d1, even if that doesn't look quite good here. Here you can follow with, for example, Empress to d4 check, and you want to be sure not to have any problem here, so maybe you put the king back on b1, maybe Empress to b4 check, king to d1, and then Empress goes to d6 and tries to advance with this pawn. But here in the game we have Empress to d2, which is again a blunder here. I mean, maybe 1254 was really intimidated here, because now it translates to Empress to c1, Empress to d1 is forced, and then it wins the snake. And now what do? Okay, it's you snap the pawn on d5, but I mean, black is very well defended here. This is very hard to strike here, so maybe you have to strike with some pawns, get behind, but at the same point there is a threat of mate just here, so you have to defend some way. Snake to a4 is now played, and now you can't defend back this pawn, so you have to find something. Pawn to f4 is tried, but this is a little too late, because now snake takes a2 is played, and there's checkmate. And I can assure you, you have no way to defend this if you try to hang on to your piece. For example, if you play Empress to d3, that doesn't defend because this is just checkmate. If you capture this, I'm still here, I just one life, so I still take your king. So the idea is just Empress to d2, and now if there's captures, but this is just going to be taken here, and you're going to be checkmate. But you have even better. You can play Empress to c1 check, this is forced to go here, and then you play Empress to d2 with check, so you can't take it again. So you go king to f1, and then Empress to x takes e2 is checkmate. So here in this position, what 254 takes his recent pawn ability and takes on a2. So loses one life, but okay, the king is still alive, and it used the special ability of the Empress to go back to the starting square. So, okay, the game continues. But now we have Empress captures b5. And after pawn to g4, pawn to b4, we have castles. So, trying to hang to the position, but okay, this Empress is full and deadly, so we have to be careful. We have pawn to c3, so poking a little around, and somehow you don't see the idea, but the idea is just to get here and promote this, and you don't have a real way of defending that. So we have pawn to e3, which is played, Empress to c4, Empress to b1, and now snake goes here, captures, and now, okay, this is a very simple endgame because black is still up 6 points of material and they're going to win the game. So very slowly but surely they just cut the king's path and they're going to promote to another snake. On this time, the king tries to get something, but see that you don't have anything to be done. So this is in this move 33 that 1254 decides to resign the game, as there was nothing much to be done. Basically, even if you try to capture here, I mean, this is which move to be played. I mean, just a snake to b2, and then you're going to this to be lost here. And if you try to capture, then you're just screwed here, and then maybe there's a stack going here and try to get the king. So very unfortunate here. So I mean, this was a very interesting game, I have to confess, but unfortunately 1254 get tricked by its own faction. But I mean, Gluttony is a very strong player, so sometimes playing the Remiro faction can be cool for him. So congrats to Gluttony. We're going to see the second game, because you're going to see that this game is pretty messy. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so for the second game, now Gluttony gets the white pieces with the Carbuncles faction, and this is the faction of 1254, so both gets the white and black pieces with the Carbuncles. So what would be interesting is that how you're going to deal against a Carbuncles versus Carbuncles game, because Carbuncles is a very difficult faction to play against and play with. Why? because this works like pawns. Every piece has a single way of moving, capturing, and making its first move. So there is a bonus first move, like a pawn, basically. But as the pattern match differently for every piece, this is very hard to get a real control of the board. You can sneak through, there's a lot of tactics, a lot of way you can be trapped. But as you play against the same factions, normally you can have something interesting going on the board. So I'm going to describe you the faction as it goes, because else you're going not to understand what happens here. The game starts with Hare to G3, and this is actually a weird move. Why? Not weird move in the sense that this is bad move, this is good move, but it looks very weird to have this move. The Hare moves like a rook. It captures like a knight. And on its first move, it can jump exactly 2 squares away. So this is exactly what happens, and the first move is played. Now we have gem to e5. This is the same as a pawn, but on their first move they can also slide 2 squares diagonally. So a little stronger than the pawn. So gem to e5 is played, and now we have gem to e4. We have Hare to b6 and square to e3. So here this squirrel moves like a knight, captures like a bishop, and on its first move it can decide to capture 1 square away, like a king. So here it asks the Hare to get a trade, but this is not accepted, and Hare slides to f6. What is interesting here is that the two heirs control this not in terms of capture, but in terms of moves, so they can decide to strike later with very interesting stuff. We have a short castle, so okay, getting in the way. Something interesting that could be played is to develop immediately the crystal here. What's the crystal doing? It moves like a bishop. It captures like a rook, with the right square, and on the first move it can move like a knight. Only problem here is that you have to be careful, because if you develop that immediately this way, then the square is going to get to f5 and now you're trapped. So maybe you're going to sacrifice this, but you don't want it to happen. And oh, it already moves, so maybe this will happen. But something that you can go here is just slide this square 1 square. And later on, if the square is straight, then you can go here and try to get something cool here. But okay, this is for a long time play. Also, you can decide to develop this squirrel here and try to get some position here, and maybe later trying to get this trade and get this on the game. A lot of things to be played here. Instead, we have gem to d5, and it comes with a very cool idea here. We have a gem to d3, but now gem captures, Hare captures, and seems like you lost a piece with the black pieces, but you forgot something. The fox. The fox is a very cool piece. On their first move, they can decide to go on any vacant square on the board, just for move. This piece moves like a queen. It captures with this little jumping ring here, and on their first move they can go on these squares. So by going here, this is check to the king, and there is no piece that can capture it. So after king to h1, it captures back on on e4, and now the carbuncles with the black pieces are up a pawn. So very cool. But you wasted your first move here, so maybe you could wait a little later, but we like this kind of tactics, so congrats 1254 to have on that. Now we have square to d3, kicking the fox, and now something that you could try is to put the fox here on h4 and try to get later on this kind of move. But okay, this is a little risky, because a lot of things can be made to try to be sure that you would never have this opportunity, but I think this deserves to be tried. For example, this move here is pretty tricky, because if you decide to run here, there's this going here. Oh no, this doesn't work, because okay, because you can just take it. But maybe there would be some piece that runs. I think that here you're pretty safe, because there's no way that you can reroute your piece in a very good way. So I wasn't mistaken when I was saying that this was a pretty cool move. But instead we have fox to b7, which is played, and now the fox becomes very passive. And I think this is not a good move. We have gem to c4, so trying to claim the center. We have gem to e6, so trying to control this square. Now we have gem to d4, so Hare to g6, trying to get an exchange here. And after captures, as the shrew, what do you want to do? And now the Hare decides to slide to b5. That's very interesting here, because it puts pressure over this pawn, and this is defended only once and twice by these pieces. And it relies on the fact that if you basically move your pieces, you would worsen your position here. So here in the game we have a square to b6, which is played, asking for square trade, and this is accepted, so after captures. I mean, you could have captured this way with the quartz, even you have this that goes with check, where do you put the Hare after that? This is pretty trapped here. And even if you try to go here, you're going to be captured by the fox. So, very interesting. So after captures here, now we have a quartz to b2. Developing, I don't understand this move. I have to be very honest. Maybe he was threatening something. I don't know. Maybe there was a tactic I didn't see. But anyways, quartz to b2 is played. And now we have gem to c6, c6 taking the Hare, and now the Hare goes back to b3. And now quartz developed to c7, and everything seems to be safe. Only problem is that you see that the board weakens a little. And this fox begins to be very powerful here. Then going to see that this is going to be very hard. Now we have squared to f4, which goes with a pin. And now you have to be very careful how you're going to defend this. The best move, I guess, in this position is to play the very simple gem to d6. Even if there can be some double pawns, that's the way of defending. But 1254 decided to go for a very nice tactic with Hare captures c4. And after Squirrel captures, Hare takes b2 and fox takes b2. Okay, there is a trade, but I'm not sure this is going to go well. Because here you see that you're up a pawn here for the Carbuncles, but with this kind of move, the trade doesn't work in your favor because you can't take this piece back. So maybe that wasn't meant to be played. At the same point, you see that this is pretty trapped. So if you play the right move, for example this move, fox to a8, then you're going to win back this squirrel because he can't move anywhere without being taken. So this is the way to be played here. But here, actually, believe it or not, Gluttony missed a very good move in this position. You should not have to capture the Hare back. You just have to play fox to c8. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a checkmate, because it attacks the king this way, and the only escape square is defended by the squirrel here, and you can't even take the fox. So they made in one, that happens, because the Carbuncles against are very tricky bastards. So after captures and the gem to b5, I don't understand this move, just play fox to a8 already, and this fox is not doing anything. Of course, you can run into this, but after this move, you just put the king here, this is captured, and the game continues. And you're not down anymore. You see that all the backing squares here are controlled, but not this one, and you're going to try to get up with your pieces and try to get something, but okay. So here, instead with gem to b5, and now fox to f6 is played with check. And here, yeah, this is the same tactic, and you're going to lose some stuff. Here, on the other hand, something that could be interesting is to play gem to f6, and now two things would happen. First, the fox would be trapped, because you don't have every move, because remember that this captures like a king first, and again, this is pretty trapped. The only problem is that because you push this pawn here, now you can have this move playing on the board, and then you try to survive this way. So this is the only problem. But I can assure that later on you can try to get some piece move that would block this fox from playing, but this is very hard to play. So in this position on move 20, 1254 decided to resign the game as there was nothing much to be done, and I pretty agree with him. Once you get to this position, you're done too much material, and even if you try to just cut the activity of the pieces, that wouldn't be enough, and you're going to be checkmated on the board. So very sad that again they just run into this kind of tactics, so congrats to Gluttony that masters these two factions. We're going to see each other for our next encounter of this front three of the Matches Neuro tournament. See you then. Bye.